After the accident, my mother-in-law forced my injured daughter to be discharged early, refusing further treatment. She'll be fine, she said, then dumped her in an empty house and left for a luxury vacation. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I'm her mother, and I took action. 3 days later, her world started collapsing. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. The call came at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Tessa Monroe was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports when her phone vibrated across the desk. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something in her gut twisted, and she picked up. Mrs. Monroe? This is County Hospital. There's been an accident involving your daughter. The rest of the words came through a tunnel. Vehicle collision. Emergency room. Stable condition. She heard herself say she was on her way. Heard herself thank the voice on the other end. Her hands moved automatically. Purse, keys, coat, while her mind stayed frozen on that single word. Accident. The drive to North Fork took 23 minutes. Tessa counted every one. She didn't speed. She didn't weave through traffic or run yellow lights. She gripped the steering wheel at 10 and 2 and kept her breathing steady because panic wouldn't help Callie. Panic never helped anyone. But her daughter's face kept flashing through her mind. Callie at 7, gap-toothed and laughing. Callie at 10, serious and reading by the window. Callie last week, complaining about math homework over dinner. Callie this morning, rolling her eyes when Tessa reminded her to text when she got to her friend's house. Tessa had let her take the bus. The hospital parking lot was half empty. She parked crooked across 2 spaces and didn't care. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed too loud. The smell of antiseptic burned her throat. A nurse at the desk pointed her toward the emergency wing without looking up from her computer. The hallway stretched forever. When Tessa finally reached the room, she stopped in the doorway. Just stopped. Her body wouldn't move forward. Callie lay in the bed, small against the white sheets. Her left leg was wrapped and elevated. A bruise bloomed purple across her temple. Her eyes were closed, lashes dark against pale skin. Tessa's first instinct was to run to her. Her second was to check if she was breathing. She did neither. Instead, she walked slowly to the foot of the bed and stood there, watching the steady rise and fall of her daughter's chest. 1 breath, 2, 3. She counted them the way she used to when Callie was an infant with asthma, when Tessa would wake at 2 in the morning just to make sure her baby was still breathing. 4, 5, 6. Tessa. She turned. Her sister-in-law, Jennifer, stood near the doorway, phone in hand, thumbs moving across the screen. Jennifer glanced up briefly, offered a tight smile, then returned to texting. "When did you get here?" Tessa asked. "About 20 minutes ago. I was closer." Jennifer's tone was distracted. "The doctor said she's okay. Concussion protocol, fractured tibia. Could have been worse." Could have been worse. Tessa hated that phrase. It meant nothing. It helped no one. Beverly Hinton stood on the opposite side of the bed, spine straight, purse clutched against her ribs like armor. Beverly was 63 and had spent the last 40 years perfecting the art of controlled disapproval. She looked at Tessa now with that familiar expression, mouth pressed thin, eyes assessing. "You're late," Beverly said. "I came as fast as I could. The doctor's already been through. You missed the explanation." Tessa moved closer to the bed. Callie's hand lay curled on top of the blanket, fingers slightly bent. Tessa wanted to touch her, but was afraid of waking her, afraid of what she might see in her daughter's eyes. "What did he say?" Tessa asked quietly. Beverly sighed as if the question itself was exhausting. "Concussion risk. They want to keep her overnight for observation. The leg will heal in 6 to 8 weeks. Standard fracture." She vomited in the ambulance. "I'm aware." Beverly adjusted her purse. That doesn't necessarily indicate severity. Children vomit for many reasons. Anxiety, motion sickness. Tessa counted another breath. 7, 8. The doctor recommended observation, she said. The doctor is being cautious to the point of excessive, Beverly replied. She's alert, responsive. Her pupils are fine. Keeping her here overnight is unnecessary and traumatic. Tessa looked at her mother-in-law. Beverly's hair was silver and perfectly styled. Her blouse was pressed, her posture impeccable. She looked like someone who had everything under control, someone who knew best. Tessa used to admire that about her. She vomited, Tessa repeated. You worry too much. Beverly's voice softened into something that might have been concern if it weren't so condescending. That's always been your problem, Tessa. You catastrophize. You imagine the worst possible outcome and then act as if it's inevitable. Jennifer looked up from her phone. Mom's right. They're just covering themselves legally. You know how hospitals are. I know how head injuries are, Tessa said. Beverly stepped away from the bed. I raised 3 children. I've dealt with more injuries and illnesses than you can imagine. I know when a situation requires panic and when it requires perspective. This requires perspective. Tessa wanted to argue. She wanted to say that Beverly's 3 children were grown now, that medical understanding had changed, that vomiting after a head injury meant something. But the words died in her throat because she knew it wouldn't matter. Beverly had decided. Beverly always decided. The doctor returned 15 minutes later. He was young, maybe 35, with tired eyes and coffee stains on his white coat. He reviewed Callie's charts, checked her responses, explained the overnight observation protocol again. Beverly interrupted halfway through. Is it medically necessary or legally cautious? The doctor hesitated. Both. But if she were your daughter and you could monitor her at home, would you feel comfortable discharging her? Mrs. Hinton, I really think. Would you feel comfortable? Beverly pressed. The doctor looked between Beverly and Tessa. His gaze lingered on Tessa, and she saw the question there. What do you want? She wanted to say, keep her here. She wanted to say, I don't trust this. She wanted to say my mother-in-law doesn't get to make this decision. But Beverly leaned in toward the doctor and said, I'll take full responsibility. The sentence hung in the air. Tessa heard it for what it really was. I'm overruling you, not the doctor. Tessa. Beverly always overruled Tessa. The doctor glanced at his clipboard. If you're willing to sign an AMA form. I'll sign whatever you need, Beverly said. Mom, Tessa started. Beverly turned to her. She'll be more comfortable at home. She needs rest, not hospital noise and constant interruptions. Trust me. Tessa looked at Callie. Her daughter's eyes had opened at some point during the conversation, glazed and unfocused. She looked so small. Tessa, Beverly said gently, trust me. And because Tessa had been trained her whole life to defer to Beverly's experience, to Beverly's certainty, to Beverly's 3 successfully raised children, she said nothing. She watched Beverly sign the forms. She watched the nurse disconnect the 4. She watched them transfer Callie into a wheelchair. And she counted breaths. 9, 10, 11. The old Hinton house sat at the end of Millstone Road, surrounded by overgrown grass and trees that blocked most of the afternoon light. It had been empty for 2 years, ever since Beverly's husband died and she moved into a newer condo, closer to town. The family talked about selling it, but never did. Too many memories, Beverly said. Too much history. Now it just sat there, aging quietly. Beverly's car pulled into the driveway. Tessa followed in her own vehicle, maintaining a careful distance. Through her windshield, she watched Beverly help Callie out of the passenger seat, watched her daughter lean heavily on her grandmother, watched them disappear into the dark mouth of the front entrance. Tessa parked and sat for a moment. The house looked different than she remembered. Sadder. The paint was peeling. One of the shutters hung crooked. The porch steps sagged slightly in the middle. She got out and walked toward the door. Beverly emerged before Tessa reached the porch. "She's settled on the couch," Beverly said, already moving toward her car. "There are blankets in the hall closet. I put a glass of water on the side table." Tessa stopped. "You're leaving?" "I have a flight in the morning. Early. I still need to pack." "A flight? To Phoenix. I told you about this last week." Beverly's tone suggested Tessa was being forgetful on purpose. "My friend Rita invited me to her timeshare. I've been planning this for months." "Your granddaughter was just in a car accident. And she's fine. The doctor said so." Beverly opened her car door. "It's quieter here anyway. She can rest without all the noise from your neighborhood." "Beverly, I don't think." "Tessa." Beverly looked at her over the roof of the car. "She needs rest. You need to stop hovering. Everything will be fine." Then she got in the car and drove away. Tessa stood in the driveway, watching the taillights disappear around the corner. The evening air felt cold. She hadn't noticed it before, but now the chill sank through her jacket, settled into her bones. She turned and went inside. The house smelled stale. Dust particles drifted through the thin light coming from the windows. The furniture was all still there, couch, chairs, side tables, but everything was covered in a fine layer of neglect. Callie lay on the couch, Beverly's jacket draped over her like a blanket. Her eyes were closed again. The glass of water sat untouched. Tessa knelt beside her daughter. "Hey, sweetheart." Callie's eyes opened slowly. "Mom." "I'm here. How do you feel?" "Cold." Tessa touched her forehead. "Cool. Too cool." She looked around the room and noticed the thermostat on the wall. She walked over and checked it. 58 degrees. Beverly had left her granddaughter in a 58-degree house. Tessa turned the heat up to 72 and listened to the furnace kick on with a reluctant groan. Then she found the blankets Beverly mentioned, shook the dust off them, and wrapped them around Callie. "Better?" she asked. Callie nodded slightly. "Where's Grandma?" "She had to go." "Am I supposed to stay here?" "Just for tonight." "Why?" Tessa didn't have a good answer. "Because your grandmother decided. Because I didn't fight back. Because I never do. Because you need quiet," she said instead. Callie's hand found hers under the blankets. Her grip was weak, fingers trembling slightly. Not from fear. Shock, Tessa recognized. The body's response to trauma. "Does your head hurt?" Tessa asked. "A little." "Did Grandma give you anything for pain?" Callie shook her head. Tessa felt something cold settle in her chest. "Nothing at all." She said I should try to sleep. Of course she did. Tessa checked the kitchen. Empty refrigerator. No food. The cabinets held only old dishes and expired spices. She checked her watch. Nearly 7. Callie hadn't eaten since lunch. She drove to the pharmacy, bought children's ibuprofen and crackers, drove back. The whole trip took 15 minutes, but she kept imagining Callie waking up alone, disoriented, afraid. When she returned, Callie hadn't moved. Tessa helped her sit up enough to take the medication and eat 2 crackers. Then she settled her daughter back down and sat on the floor beside the couch, one hand resting on Callie's arm. "Try to sleep," she whispered. "Will you stay?" "I'm not going anywhere." Callie's breathing slowly evened out. Tessa stayed where she was, counting each breath, watching the slight movement of the blankets. 12, 13, 14. Around 10 p.m., she called Beverly. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Tessa didn't leave a message. She called again at 11. Voicemail. Again at midnight. Finally, Beverly answered. "Tessa, it's late. You left her without pain medication." A pause. "She has aspirin in her system from the hospital." That wore off hours ago. She was cold, hungry. The house was 58 degrees. The thermostat must have been set low. An oversight. An oversight. Tessa's voice stayed level. She was good at that. Years of practice. You signed her out AMA and left her in an empty house. I didn't leave her. I left her with you. You didn't know I was coming here. Another pause, longer this time. Of course I did. You're her mother. Where else would you be? The logic was airtight and completely meaningless. Beverly always did that, rearranged reality until she was right. You should have kept her at the hospital, Tessa said quietly. We've already discussed this. The decision is made. Now please, I have an early morning. We'll talk when I'm back from Phoenix. The line went dead. Tessa sat on the cold floor, phone in hand, and felt something shift inside her. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter. Something methodical. She found her bag and pulled out the spiral notebook she kept for work notes. Blue cover, slightly worn. She'd had it since college. She flipped to a blank page and began writing. Tuesday, October 17th. 3:47 p.m. Hospital call. 4:10 p.m. Arrived at County Hospital ER. She wrote everything. The doctor's recommendation. Beverly's objections. The AMA discharge. The house on Millstone Road. The thermostat. The lack of food. The lack of medication. Time. Place. Who said what? She wrote until her hand cramped, until every detail was documented. Then she checked Callie one more time, still sleeping, breathing steady, and lay down on the other couch with her jacket as a pillow. She managed 3 hours of sleep. Callie's hand somehow finding hers in the darkness, their fingers intertwined. 15, 16, 17. Morning came gray and cold. Tessa woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. She grabbed it, disoriented, expecting another call from the hospital or maybe Beverly calling to explain herself. Instead, it was a notification from the family group chat. She opened it. Beverly had posted 4 photos from the airport, sitting at a cafe with an oversized coffee, standing by the departure board, a selfie with the caption, "Quick getaway palm tree needed this." The timestamp read 6:42 a.m. Tessa stared at the screen. The chat was active. Jennifer had already replied with "Have fun," and Beverly's other son had sent a thumbs-up emoji. Normal family banter. Sunday morning pleasantries. As if yesterday hadn't happened. As if Beverly hadn't discharged her granddaughter against medical advice and abandoned her in a cold, empty house. As if this was all completely fine. Tessa watched the screen dim. She didn't respond, didn't react, just sat there as the morning light crept through the dusty windows and illuminated her daughter's sleeping form. Callie stirred around 8. She woke slowly, confused, asking where she was. Tessa helped her sit up, gave her more ibuprofen, made her drink water. "How's your head?" Tessa asked. "Fuzzy." "Fuzzy how?" "Like everything's far away." That cold feeling in Tessa's chest spread. "Can you tell me your full name?" "Callie Elizabeth Monroe." "What day is it?" Callie hesitated. "Wednesday." "Almost. It's Tuesday. You were in an accident yesterday. Do you remember?" Callie's face scrunched. "Sort of. There was a truck." "That's right. Did I go to the hospital?" "Yes." "I don't really remember." Tessa kept her voice calm. "That's okay. That's normal after a concussion." But it wasn't okay. None of this was okay. She helped Callie to the bathroom, helped her change into the spare clothes Tessa always kept in her car. Then she wrapped her daughter in the jacket from yesterday and guided her back to the car. "Where are we going?" Callie asked. "Back to the hospital." "Why?" "Just to make sure everything's healing right." Callie didn't argue. That alone worried Tessa more than anything else. Callie always argued. The drive back to County Hospital took 20 minutes. Tessa called ahead, explained the situation to the nurse on duty. By the time they arrived, a room was ready. Different doctor this time. Older woman with glasses and a gentle manner. She examined Callie thoroughly, asked questions, checked responses. She didn't rush, didn't dismiss anything. When she finished, she pulled Tessa aside into the hallway. Her cognitive responses are delayed, the doctor said quietly. Typical for concussion, but I'm concerned about the early discharge yesterday. Who made that decision? My mother-in-law. She signed the AMA form. And where was the patient after discharge? Tessa hesitated. Then she told the truth. All of it. The empty house. The cold. The lack of supervision or medication. The doctor's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or concern. I'd like to keep her for observation today, she said. At minimum. I also need to ask you some questions. Standard protocol for these situations. What situations? When a minor is discharged against medical advice and there are questions about adequate supervision. Tessa understood what she was really saying. A nurse appeared with a clipboard. Young woman. Dark hair pulled back, kind face. Mrs. Monroe? I need to take a statement. Just routine. Would you mind stepping into the consultation room? Tessa glanced back at Callie's room. Her daughter was visible through the doorway, propped up in bed, eyes half closed. It'll only take 15 minutes, the nurse said gently. She'll be right here. Tessa followed her down the hall. The consultation room was small, institutional. 2 chairs, a desk, a box of tissues on the counter. The nurse sat down and positioned her clipboard. I need to ask you about yesterday, she said. Start from when you arrived at the hospital. Tessa answered carefully, honestly. She described Beverly's objections to overnight observation, the AMA discharge, the house on Millstone Road, everything she'd written in her notebook. The nurse wrote steadily, not looking up. And was your daughter supervised throughout the night? Yes, I stayed with her. But initially she was left alone. Yes. For how long? 40 minutes. The nurse's pen paused. In a cold house with no food or medication available, following a head injury. Yes. And your mother-in-law knew about the concussion protocol. The doctor explained it to her. But she discharged your daughter anyway. Yes. The nurse looked up. Her expression was careful, neutral, but Tessa saw something there. Something that said, I've seen this before. Thank you, the nurse said quietly. This will be included in the patient's file. When Tessa returned to Callie's room, her daughter was sleeping again. The doctor had ordered another CT scan, just to be safe. Another overnight observation. This time, Tessa didn't argue. She pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. Her phone buzzed. Another group chat notification. Jennifer had posted a photo of her coffee with the caption, Tuesday vibes. Tessa closed the app without responding. She thought about Beverly on a plane somewhere over the Southwest, drinking tomato juice, reading a magazine, completely unbothered. She thought about Callie yesterday, alone in that cold house, too disoriented to even understand she'd been abandoned. And she thought about every other time Beverly had overruled her, every decision dismissed, every concern minimized, every time Tessa had swallowed her objections because Beverly had experience, Beverly knew better, Beverly had raised 3 children. Beverly always won. Tessa pulled out her notebook again and added more details. Then she opened her phone and took photos of the medical charts visible at the foot of Callie's bed. She documented the new doctor's concerns, the nurse's questions, the second admission. She didn't feel angry. Anger was hot and reactive and faded quickly. This was different. This was methodical. This was Tessa finally understanding that trust was a gift, not an obligation. And Beverly had just proven she didn't deserve it. Callie stayed in the hospital for 2 days. The second CT scan came back clean, but the doctor wanted to monitor her cognitive responses. The headaches, the nausea that kept returning in waves. Tessa stayed with her the entire time. She slept in the chair beside the bed, ate cafeteria food, washed her face in the tiny bathroom sink. Work called twice. She told them it was a family emergency and left it at that. Beverly returned from Phoenix on Thursday evening. She texted the group chat with photos of red rocks and blue skies. She didn't text Tessa. She didn't visit the hospital. On Friday morning, Tessa requested Callie's complete medical records from the hospital administrative office. The clerk asked if she needed them for insurance purposes. "Just for my own documentation," Tessa said. The clerk nodded and made a note. "They'll be ready in 3 to 5 business days." Tessa thanked her and took the receipt. That afternoon, while Callie napped, Tessa walked down to the hospital's patient advocate office. Small room on the second floor. Easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. The advocate was a woman in her 50s named Patricia Vance, reading glasses on a chain, comfortable cardigan, the kind of person who'd spent years listening to complaints and problems and still somehow maintained patience. "How can I help you?" Patricia asked. Tessa sat down and explained the situation. She kept her voice level, factual. No emotion, just events. Patricia listened without interrupting. When Tessa finished, she made a note on her pad. "You're filing a formal concern about the discharge process," Patricia said. "Yes. And about inadequate post-discharge supervision." "Yes. You understand this will trigger a review." "I do." Patricia studied her for a moment. "Mrs. Monroe, I need to ask, are you looking for a specific outcome here? Apology? Policy change? Something else?" Tessa considered the question. What did she want? She wanted Beverly to understand that she'd been wrong. She wanted the hospital to acknowledge that the discharge had been inappropriate. She wanted Callie to never feel that vulnerable again. But mostly, she wanted documentation. Evidence that it had happened. Proof that she hadn't imagined it, hadn't overreacted, hadn't catastrophized the way Beverly always accused her of doing. "I want a record," Tessa said finally. "I want it documented that this happened and that it was unsafe." Patricia nodded slowly. "I can help you with that." She pulled out a formal complaint form. Together, they went through every detail: the early discharge, the AMA form signed under pressure, the empty house, the lack of medication, the inadequate supervision, the return to the hospital 48 hours later with worsening symptoms. Tessa signed the form. Patricia made 2 copies, one for Tessa's records, one for the hospital's review board. "This will be investigated," Patricia said. "The review board will interview staff, examine documentation, assess whether protocols were followed appropriately. What happens if they find the discharge was inappropriate? Depends on the findings. Could be additional training for staff. Could be policy revisions. Could be..." Patricia paused. "Could be more serious consequences for the individual who signed the AMA form." Tessa understood. Beverly could face real repercussions. Not criminal, but official, documented, permanent. "How long does the review take?" she asked. "Usually 2 to 3 weeks." Tessa thanked her and left. When she returned to Callie's room, her daughter was awake, staring at the ceiling. "Mom." "Right here, sweetheart." "I remember more now. About the accident." Tessa sat down. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." "I want to." Callie's voice was quiet. There was a truck. It wasn't going fast or anything. It just didn't stop at the sign. And then there was this crunching sound. That's what I remember most. The sound. That must have been scary. Yeah. Callie turned her head to look at Tessa. Grandma was really mad at the hospital. "Mad about what?" "About them wanting to keep me. I heard her talking to the doctor. She kept saying it was unnecessary. You remember that?" "Kind of. It's fuzzy, but she didn't sound worried. She sounded annoyed." Tessa reached for her daughter's hand. I'm sorry you heard that. Is that why we left? Because Grandma said to. The question was simple. The answer wasn't. Yes, Tessa said carefully. That's why we left. But you didn't want to. No, I didn't. Kelly processed this. Why didn't you say so? Why didn't she? Because Beverly always knew best. Because arguing felt disrespectful. Because Tessa had been raised to defer to authority, to smile and nod, to swallow her objections. Because she'd learned as a child that adults could fail you and still expect gratitude. Her own mother had been like Beverly, dismissive of pain, impatient with feelings, certain that tough love built character. When Tessa had a fever, she went to school anyway. When she sprained her ankle, she walked it off. When she cried, she was told to be stronger. She'd survived it. Everyone survived it. But surviving and thriving were different things. I should have spoken up, Tessa said quietly. I should have insisted we stay. That's on me. It's on Grandma, too. Yes, it is. Callie squeezed her hand. You're here now. I am, and I'm not leaving. That night, Tessa didn't sleep. She lay in the uncomfortable chair and thought about all the times she'd let Beverly overrule her instincts. All the times she'd second-guessed herself. All the times she'd been told she worried too much. And she realized something. Beverly would do this again. Not necessarily with Callie, but with someone. Some decision. Some moment where her certainty would override someone else's caution. And she'd convince herself that experience equaled wisdom. Unless someone stopped her. Unless someone finally said, no more. Tessa pulled out her notebook and added one more entry. Friday, October 20th. Formal complaint filed with Patient Advocate Office. Review Board investigation initiated. Callie remembers more. Needs to document this. She wrote until her hand ached. She wrote until the nurses changed shifts and morning light filtered through the blinds. She wrote until she understood exactly what she was doing. Not revenge. Not punishment. Protection. Callie came home on Saturday afternoon. Tessa had spent Friday night cleaning their house, making sure everything was ready. Soft pillows on the couch. Pain medication organized. Crackers and ginger ale for the nausea. A bell on the side table so Callie could call her from anywhere in the house. Beverly sent a text Saturday morning. Glad to hear she's better. Let me know when you want to bring her by for a visit. Tessa read it twice, then archived it without responding. The first few days were focused entirely on Callie. Sleep schedules, medication times, ice packs for the leg, monitoring for warning signs, severe headache, vomiting, confusion. Tessa worked from home. Laptop balanced on the kitchen counter, answering emails between temperature checks. By Wednesday, Callie's cognitive responses had improved significantly. The headaches were less frequent. The nausea had faded. She could focus on a movie for more than 20 minutes without getting dizzy. Progress. That same afternoon, the medical records arrived. Tessa signed for the package and opened it at the kitchen table after Callie went down for a nap. 247 pages of documentation. Admission notes. Diagnostic results. Doctor's observations. Nursing logs. She read every page. The discharge notes included Beverly's signature on the AMA form. The nurse who processed the discharge had added a comment. Family insisted on early release despite medical recommendation for overnight observation. Patient appeared disoriented but responsive. Grandfather, sick, should be grandmother. Signed full responsibility waiver. Further down, in the notes from Callie's second admission, the attending physician had written, patient presented with continued cognitive delays and reported inadequate post-discharge supervision. Recommend patient advocate consultation. And there, at the bottom of the second admissions documentation, patient advocate notified. Case referred to review board. Everything Tessa had said was now part of the official record. Everything Beverly had done was documented. Tessa organized the pages into sections, labeled them with sticky notes, stored them in a 3-ring binder. She didn't know exactly what she'd do with this documentation, but having it felt important, like building a foundation for something she couldn't quite see yet. On Thursday, Beverly called. Tessa, let it ring. Voicemail. Tessa, it's me. I haven't heard from you in over a week. I'm starting to worry. Call me back so I know everything's all right with Callie. The message was friendly, concerned even, as if the past 10 days had been normal, as if nothing had happened that required addressing. Tessa deleted it. Beverly called again Friday morning. Tessa was making breakfast when the phone buzzed across the counter. She watched it ring, watched Beverly's name light up the screen. This time she answered. Hello. Finally. Beverly's relief sounded genuine. I've been trying to reach you. How is she? Healing. That's wonderful. When can I see her? I don't think that's a good idea right now. A pause. What do you mean? I mean she needs rest and consistency, minimal stress. Tessa, I'm her grandmother. I'm hardly stressful. Tessa measured her words carefully. You discharged her against medical advice and left her alone in an empty house after a head injury. The silence on the other end was absolute. Then Beverly laughed, sharp, disbelieving. Is that what this is about? You're still upset about that? Tessa, she's fine. You're being dramatic. She had to be readmitted. Because you panicked. You always panic. She had cognitive delays, memory gaps. The doctor was concerned. Doctors are always concerned. That's what they do. They cover themselves legally. But practically speaking, she recovered exactly as I predicted. Tessa felt something settle into place. The final piece of understanding she'd been avoiding. Beverly wasn't going to apologize. She wasn't going to acknowledge any mistake. She would reframe, redirect, and dismiss until the narrative shifted entirely. Until Tessa was the one who'd overreacted. Until the hospital was the one being overly cautious. Until Beverly's judgment was vindicated by Callie's eventual recovery. I need to go, Tessa said quietly. Wait. Tessa, I want to see her. Can I come by this weekend? No. Excuse me. I said no. You can't come by this weekend. You're keeping me from my granddaughter? I'm protecting my daughter. From what? From me. Beverly's voice climbed higher, indignant. This is ridiculous. You can't seriously be suggesting I'm a danger to her. You left her alone, Beverly, after a head injury. That's not safe. That's not protective. That's not acceptable. It was 40 minutes. You act like I abandoned her for days. 40 minutes was enough. Beverly's breath came faster through the phone. I will not be spoken to this way. I will not be accused of negligence by someone who couldn't even make a decision in the emergency room without second-guessing herself. You've always been like this, Tessa. Weak, anxious, unable to trust anyone else's judgment. The words should have hurt, would have hurt a month ago. Now they just confirmed everything Tessa needed to know. I have to go, she repeated. We're not done talking about this. Yes, we are. Tessa hung up. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from finally saying out loud what she should have said 10 days ago. The phone rang again immediately. Beverly calling back. Tessa turned it off. The family dinner invitation came via the group chat on Monday morning. Jennifer posted, Mom's hosting Sunday dinner this weekend. Everyone come. Let's celebrate Callie's recovery. Party popper. Beverly replied immediately, Yes, I'll make her favorite, pot roast and mashed potatoes. Can't wait to see everyone. Someone else chimed in about bringing dessert. Another person asked what time. Normal family planning. Normal Sunday tradition. As if the previous phone call had never happened. Tessa stared at the messages. Part of her wanted to decline immediately. But another part, the part that was tired of being dismissed, tired of being managed, wanted to go. Wanted to sit at that table and let Beverly try to pretend everything was fine. Wanted to watch what happened when Beverly realized it wasn't. She replied, "We'll be there." Beverly responded with a heart emoji. Sunday arrived gray and damp. Callie was well enough to leave the house now, her leg healing, her headaches gone. She asked if she had to go to the dinner. "Not if you don't want to," Tessa said. "I kind of want to see everyone. But Grandma makes you uncomfortable." Callie nodded, looking relieved that Tessa understood. "She keeps texting me, asking how I am, but it feels weird, like she's checking if I'm mad at her." "Are you?" "I don't know. Maybe." Callie picked at the cast on her leg. She wasn't very nice at the hospital, and then she just left. "Yeah, she did." "Are you mad at her?" Tessa thought about that. Mad felt too simple, too small for what she actually felt. "I'm disappointed," she said finally, "and I'm done making excuses for her." Kelly processed this. "Okay, then let's go. I want to see what happens." They arrived at Beverly's condo at 4:30. The parking lot was already full. Jennifer's van, Beverly's other son David's truck, various grandchildren's cars. The whole family gathered like always. Beverly opened the door before Tessa could knock. "Callie." She pulled her granddaughter into a hug that looked warm and grandmotherly. "Look at you, up and moving. Oh, sweetheart, I've missed you so much." Callie returned the hug stiffly. "Hi, Grandma." Beverly released her and turned to Tessa. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Tessa, so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it." Inside, the condo smelled like roast beef and rosemary. The dining table was set for 12. The family milled around in the kitchen and living room. Jennifer with her 2 kids, David with his wife and teenage daughter, Beverly's youngest son without his family. Everyone greeted Callie warmly, asked about her leg, commented on how well she looked. No one mentioned the accident directly. No one asked about the hospital. It was as if everyone had agreed beforehand. "We don't talk about unpleasant things." Dinner was served at 5. Beverly had made pot roast, just as promised. Mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls. Everything Callie supposedly loved, though Tessa knew her daughter preferred pasta to beef. They sat around the table, passing dishes, filling plates. Beverly positioned herself at the head, Callie directly to her right. A power move disguised as affection. "Doesn't she look wonderful?" Beverly said to the table at large. "I knew she'd bounce back quickly. Kids are so resilient." Jennifer agreed enthusiastically. "So much tougher than we give them credit for." David nodded. "Remember when I broke my collarbone falling off the roof? I was back playing football in 6 weeks." "Exactly," Beverly said. "These things seem scary in the moment, but children heal remarkably well. Much better than adults." Callie picked at her potatoes. She glanced at Tessa, who gave her a small nod. Beverly continued, voice bright and cheerful. "The important thing is she got proper rest and care. That's all she needed. See, I told you she'd be fine." The sentence hung in the air. "I told you she'd be fine. Not, I'm glad she recovered. Not, I'm sorry for leaving her. Just, I was right." Tessa set down her fork carefully. She had to be readmitted to the hospital. The table went quiet. Beverly's smile flickered. "What?" 2 days after you discharged her, she had worsening symptoms, cognitive delays, memory gaps. That's... Beverly looked around the table, seeking support. "That's just normal recovery. The doctors were being overly cautious. The doctors were doing their job." "Tessa, please. Not here. Not now." "When then?" "When would be a good time to talk about how you signed her out against medical advice and then left her alone in a cold, empty house?" David shifted uncomfortably. Jennifer's face flushed. The teenagers at the other end of the table suddenly found their phones extremely interesting. Beverly's composure cracked slightly. I didn't leave her alone. You were there. 40 minutes later, you didn't know I was coming. You left her there and went home to pack for your vacation. It wasn't a vacation. It was a planned trip. You knew about it. I knew you were going to Phoenix. I didn't know you'd prioritize it over your granddaughter's safety. Beverly stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor. I will not sit here and be attacked in my own home, especially not about something that turned out fine. Look at her. She's healed. She's healthy. I made the right call. Tessa stayed seated. Her voice stayed calm. You weren't there. What? You weren't there when she woke up disoriented, when she couldn't remember her own name, when she threw up from the headache. You were on a plane. Because she was in your care. Because I trusted you to handle it. You didn't trust me. You dismissed me, like you always dismiss me. Beverly's face flushed red. This is what you do. This is exactly what you do. You take a difficult situation and make it about you. You turn yourself into the victim when all I was trying to do was help. I didn't ask for your help. I asked you to let the hospital do their job. Their job is to cover their liability. Their job is to bill insurance for unnecessary overnight stays. I was protecting her from their overreach. You were protecting your schedule. The accusation landed hard. Beverly's mouth opened, closed. Around the table, family members stared into their plates. Jennifer finally spoke, voice tentative. Mom did sign the form. That was her decision. Beverly rounded on her. Don't you start. I'm just saying maybe Tessa has a point. About the house. About leaving her there. She was fine. But she might not have been, Jennifer said quietly, if something had gone wrong. But it didn't. Nothing went wrong. Tessa stood up. Something did go wrong, Beverly. You made a medical decision for my daughter based on your convenience. You overruled the doctors. You overruled me, and you left her vulnerable. That's what went wrong. Beverly stared at her, breathing hard. You're keeping her from me. You're turning her against me. I'm protecting her. From what? From you. The silence was absolute. Even the teenagers had stopped scrolling. Beverly's hands trembled. You don't get to do that. You don't get to decide I'm not safe. Yes, Tessa said quietly. I do. That's exactly what I get to decide. She looked at Callie, who was sitting very still, eyes wide. Come on, sweetheart. We're going home. Callie stood immediately, relief visible in her posture. They walked toward the door. Behind them, Beverly called out, voice breaking slightly. You're overreacting. You're making this into something it isn't. Tessa turned back one last time. You left her. That's not overreacting. That's just fact. They left. In the car, Callie was quiet for several minutes. Then that was intense. Yeah, it was. Did you mean it? About protecting me from her? Yes. Callie nodded slowly. Good. They drove home through the darkening evening. Tessa's hands were steady on the wheel. Her breathing was even. She didn't feel victorious or vindicated. She felt clear. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, she felt absolutely certain she'd done the right thing. The letter arrived 3 days later. Official hospital letterhead. Patient Review Board. Tessa opened it at the kitchen table while Callie was at school. She read it twice to make sure she understood. Dear Ms. Monroe, this letter is to inform you that your formal complaint regarding the discharge of minor patient Callie Monroe on October 17th has been reviewed by the hospital's Patient Safety Review Board. After examination of medical records, staff interviews, and discharge documentation, the board has determined that 1. The discharge was processed appropriately according to AMA protocols when family member Beverly Hinton signed full responsibility waiver. 2. However, the board has concerns regarding post-discharge supervision, particularly given the documented lack of adequate monitoring for a minor patient with head trauma. 3. The board is conducting a follow-up investigation into whether the individual who signed the AMA form had full understanding of the medical risks and supervision requirements. You will be contacted within 10 business days for additional information gathering. Sincerely, County Hospital Patient Review Board. Tessa folded the letter carefully and placed it in her binder with all the other documentation. Then she waited. Beverly called that evening. Tessa didn't answer. The voicemail was clipped, angry. I received something in the mail today. From the hospital. About a review board investigation. Do you know anything about that? Tessa deleted it without responding. The next morning, Beverly called again. Then Jennifer called. Then David. Tessa let them all go to voicemail. Finally, Beverly showed up at the house. Tessa saw her through the front window, getting out of her car, marching up the walkway, face set in rigid determination. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked frightened. Tessa opened the door before Beverly could knock. What did you do? Beverly demanded. I filed a formal complaint with the patient advocate. You what? I documented what happened. The hospital is reviewing the discharge. Beverly's face went pale. You made this official. You brought them into our family business. It became their business when you signed an AMA form for my daughter. I had every right to sign that form. That's for the review board to determine. Tessa, you need to retract this. You need to tell them it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Please. Beverly's voice cracked slightly. This is humiliating. They're questioning my judgment. They're investigating me like I'm some kind of criminal. You're not a criminal. You just made a bad decision. Based on experience. Based on having raised 3 children. Based on knowing more about these situations than you do. Your experience doesn't override medical advice, Beverly. It should. It does. I've earned that trust. Tessa looked at her mother-in-law. This woman who'd been so certain, so unshakable, so convinced of her own rightness. Now she just looked small, desperate, almost sympathetic. Almost. You had my trust, Tessa said quietly. You lost it when you put your schedule ahead of Callie's safety. I didn't. Yes, you did. And now there are consequences. Beverly's hands clenched around her purse strap. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I tried to help. I'm sorry I used my judgment. I'm sorry I've been part of this family for 35 years and apparently learned nothing about how to care for children. The apology was bitter, sarcastic, completely hollow. Tessa felt nothing. I don't want your apology, she said. I already finished. Finished what? Being dismissed by you. Beverly stared at her. What does that mean? It means you don't get to override me anymore. You don't get to make decisions for my daughter. You don't get to tell me I worry too much or that I'm being dramatic. You made a choice, Beverly. Now you get to live with it. You're punishing me. No, I'm protecting Callie. There's a difference. Beverly's eyes were wet now, but Tessa couldn't tell if it was anger or hurt or fear. Maybe all 3. I'm her grandmother, Beverly said, voice breaking. You can't just cut me out. I'm not cutting you out. I'm setting boundaries. Something I should have done years ago. Because of one mistake. Because you refused to acknowledge it was a mistake. Beverly opened her mouth, closed it. For once, she had nothing to say. Tessa stepped back. I need you to leave now. Tessa, please leave. Beverly stood on the porch for another moment, then turned and walked back to her car. She didn't drive away immediately. She sat there, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. Tessa watched through the window until Beverly finally started the engine and pulled away. Then she closed the door, locked it, and went to check on Callie. Act N, 2. The investigation took 3 weeks. During that time, the family group chat went quiet. No Sunday dinner invitations. No casual photos. No emoji-filled updates. Just silence. Tessa kept working, kept monitoring Callie's recovery, kept everything as normal as possible. Callie's leg healed. Her headaches disappeared completely. She went back to school, caught up on homework, started smiling again. Life moved forward. The hospital called twice, once to clarify timeline details, once to verify Tessa's statement. She answered both calls calmly, provided the information they needed, and continued her day. She didn't think about Beverly constantly. She didn't agonize over what might happen. She simply waited. The results came in a formal letter dated November 9th. Dear Ms. Monroe, the Patient Safety Review Board has completed its investigation into the discharge of minor patient Callie Monroe on October 17th. Findings: 1. The AMA discharge was processed according to hospital protocol when family member Beverly Hinton signed full responsibility. 2. However, the board found significant concerns regarding insufficient understanding of post-discharge supervision requirements, inadequate arrangements for patient monitoring following head trauma, documented evidence of unsafe environment, unheated residence, no access to medication or nutrition. 3. While Ms. Hinton did not violate hospital policy directly, her actions demonstrated failure to comprehend the serious nature of head trauma in minors. Actions taken: educational materials on AMA discharge requirements will be enhanced. Family members signing AMA forms will receive mandatory counseling on supervision responsibilities. This case has been documented for staff training purposes. Ms. Hinton will not be permitted to sign future medical release forms for minors at this facility. The board extends its appreciation for your cooperation in this review. Your advocacy helped identify gaps in our discharge education process. Sincerely, County Hospital Patient Safety Review Board. Tessa read the letter 3 times. Not criminal charges, not dramatic accusations, not the burning revenge Beverly probably feared. Just documentation, just consequences, just the clear, official statement that what happened had been inappropriate and unsafe. Just validation that Tessa hadn't imagined it, hadn't overreacted, hadn't catastrophized. That evening, Beverly called. Tessa almost didn't answer. Then she thought, might as well get this over with. She picked up. Hello. You got what you wanted. Beverly's voice was flat, emotionless. I wanted Callie safe. You embarrassed me. You made this official. You involved the hospital administration in our family problems. You involved them when you signed that form. They've barred me from making medical decisions for my grandchildren. Did you know that? That's in my permanent record now, at that hospital and any facility they share information with. Tessa felt something tighten in her chest. Not guilt, just acknowledgement. I'm sorry that happened. No, you're not. I'm sorry you lost that trust. I'm not sorry I filed the complaint. Silence on the other end. Then was it worth it? Destroying our relationship over this. I didn't destroy anything, Beverly. You made a choice. I documented it. The hospital drew their own conclusions. Based on your complaint. Based on evidence. More silence. The family's talking, Beverly said finally. About you. About what you did. About how you went behind my back instead of handling this privately. I did handle it privately. I tried talking to you. You dismissed me. So you escalated to authorities. I escalated to documentation. It's the same thing. No, Tessa said quietly. It's not. Authorities implies punishment. Documentation implies protection. I was protecting my daughter from future situations where your judgment might override medical advice. My judgment has kept 3 children and 5 grandchildren safe for decades. And then it didn't. This time it didn't. Beverly's breath caught. For a moment, Tessa thought she might finally acknowledge it. Might finally say, you're right. I made a mistake. Instead, I hope you're prepared for the fallout. What fallout? The family isn't going to forget this. Jennifer's already planning Thanksgiving without you. David won't return your calls. The kids are confused about why Grandma can't see them anymore. Beverly, you can see them. I never said you couldn't. Under your supervision. With your rules. With you dictating every interaction. I set boundaries. That's not the same as dictating. It feels the same to me. Then maybe that's the problem. Another long silence. Then Beverly said very quietly, I will never forgive you for this. And she hung up. Tessa sat with the phone in her hand, listening to the dial tone. She felt tired, sad even, but not guilty. Not anymore. Thanksgiving was strange that year. Tessa had expected to host like she usually did. Small gathering, just her and Callie and maybe a friend or two. Keep it simple. Then David's wife called. We're doing a family thing at our place, Emma said carefully. Small. Just us and Jennifer's family. But Jennifer said she'd prefer if you didn't come. Okay, Tessa said. You're not upset? No. Really. Really. Emma hesitated. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. With the hospital thing. But Beverly's, well, she's making this really difficult for everyone. I understand. Do you want to talk to David about it? No need. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, Emma. They hung up. Callie heard the whole conversation from the couch. So we're not going. Nope. Good. Can we do pizza instead of turkey? Tessa laughed. Absolutely. They spent Thanksgiving eating pizza, watching movies, and playing board games. Just the two of them. It was quiet and comfortable and completely drama-free. The best Thanksgiving Tessa could remember. The family drift happened gradually after that. No dramatic confrontations. No screaming matches. No ultimatums. People just adjusted. Jennifer stopped texting in the group chat. David's responses became shorter, more formal. Birthday cards arrived late or not at all. Holiday plans were made without consulting Tessa. Beverly became the center of sympathy. The wounded party. The grandmother who'd been unjustly punished for trying to help. The narrative shifted the way it always did in families. History was rewritten. Details were softened. Eventually, the story became, Beverly made one small judgment call, and Tessa blew it completely out of proportion. Tessa watched it happen and felt nothing. She didn't correct the narrative, didn't argue with the revisionists, didn't defend herself to relatives who'd already made up their minds. She simply stepped back and let them believe whatever they needed to believe. In February, her brother-in-law sent a group text. Mom's birthday dinner March 5th. Who can make it? Jennifer replied immediately. David said he'd be there. Emma said they'd try. Tessa didn't respond. A week later, David called. You coming to Mom's birthday? Probably not. Tessa, this has gone on long enough. She's family. I know. So be the bigger person. Move past this. I have moved past it. That's why I'm not coming. David sighed. You're being stubborn. I'm being consistent. Same thing. No, Tessa said. Not really. He didn't call again. The most unexpected consequence came from the extended family. Beverly's sister called in March. Aunt Linda, who Tessa had always liked. I heard what happened, Linda said. With Callie and the hospital thing. Tessa braced herself. And I wish I'd done something similar 20 years ago. Tessa blinked. What? Beverly's always been like this. Certain she knows best. Dismissive of anyone else's concerns. I love my sister, but she's got blind spots the size of mountains when it comes to admitting mistakes. I didn't know that. Most people don't. She's good at managing appearances. Linda paused. My daughter broke her arm at Beverly's house when she was 9. Beverly told us it was just bruised. Made us wait 3 hours before going to the hospital. Turned out to be a displaced fracture. Linda, I never said anything. Felt disloyal, but watching her do the same thing with Callie. I should have spoken up back then. Should have drawn boundaries. It's not too late. For me, maybe not. For you, though, you're doing the right thing. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. They talked for another hour. About family dynamics. About generational patterns. About the difference between respect and blind obedience. When they hung up, Tessa felt lighter. Not vindicated. Just understood. By summer, the family structure had completely reorganized. Beverly's circle got smaller. Tighter. Those who believed her version of events drew closer. Those who had doubts drifted away. Tessa wasn't invited to gatherings anymore. Neither was Callie. And honestly, neither of them minded. Callie had healed completely. The leg fracture left no lasting effects. The concussion symptoms never returned. She went back to school, reconnected with friends, rejoined the soccer team. She asked about Beverly occasionally. Does Grandma ever text you? Sometimes. Do you answer? Not usually. Why not? Tessa thought about how to explain it. Because she hasn't changed her mind about what happened. And I haven't changed mine. So you're both just stuck? She is. I'm not. What's the difference? She's stuck trying to be right. I'm just moving forward. Kelly processed this. Do you miss her? Tessa considered the question honestly. Did she miss Beverly? The woman who'd raised her husband, who'd been in her life for 15 years, who'd taught her to make pie crust and criticized her parenting in equal measure. I miss the idea of having a supportive mother-in-law, Tessa said finally. But I don't miss her. Not the way she actually was. That makes sense. They were sitting on the back steps of their small rented house, watching summer evening fade into night. Fireflies blinked in the grass. The air smelled like cut lawn and distant barbecue. Grandma doesn't call anymore, Kelly said after a while. No, she doesn't. Does that make you sad? Tessa watched the fireflies, tiny lights appearing and disappearing. There and gone. There and gone. No, she said honestly. It makes me tired, but not sad. Are you mad at her? Tessa thought about it. Was she angry? She'd been angry once. In the hospital, when she realized Callie had been left alone. At the family dinner, when Beverly refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing. During those first few weeks, when the investigation was pending. But now she just felt done. No, she said. I'm not mad. Then what are you? Finished. Callie leaned against her shoulder. That's a good word. They sat together as darkness fell. Somewhere down the street, kids were laughing. A dog barked. A car drove past with music thumping from the speakers. Normal life. Ordinary evening. Nothing dramatic. Just a mother and daughter. Safe together, boundaries intact. Tessa didn't forgive Beverly. She didn't need to. Forgiveness implied something was owed, absolution, reconciliation, return to previous relationship. But Tessa owed Beverly nothing. What she had instead was clarity, safety, boundaries, and her daughter's trust, earned by showing Callie that adults could be held accountable, that authority didn't equal rightness, that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was say, no more. A year after the accident, Tessa threw away the spiral notebook. She didn't need it anymore. The hospital had their documentation. The review board had made their determination. The family had reorganized around Beverly's wounded pride. Everything was settled. One evening in October, exactly a year after the accident, Kelly came home from school and found Tessa at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. You okay, Mom? Tessa looked up. Yeah, just thinking. About what? About how different everything is from last year. Callie sat down across from her. Better different, or worse different. Better, definitely better. Even without Grandma. Especially without Grandma. Callie smiled. Good. They ordered Chinese takeout and ate it straight from the containers while watching a movie. Simple evening. Nothing special. But Tessa felt the weight of the past years settle into something manageable. Not forgotten. Just incorporated. Accepted. She'd been tested and hadn't backed down. She'd been dismissed and had documented it anyway. She'd been accused of overreacting and had stood firm in her certainty. And in the end, she'd chosen safety over comfort, boundaries over peace, her daughter over family approval. In real families, functional families, that wouldn't have been a choice. But in the family she'd married into, it had been necessary. And Tessa had made it. That night, after Callie went to bed, Tessa pulled out the letter from the hospital one last time. Read through the findings. The acknowledgement that Beverly's actions had been unsafe. The documentation that Tessa's concerns had been valid. Then she filed it away in the binder, closed the drawer, and didn't look at it again. She didn't need validation anymore. She had something better. She had certainty, protection, the knowledge that she'd done exactly what needed to be done. No forgiveness required. No closure necessary. Just the quiet strength of a mother who'd finally learned that keeping her child safe was more important than keeping her in-laws comfortable. And in real families, the ones you build, not just the ones you're given. That is what winning looks like.